We don't always notice the moment a family stops being a place and turns into a balance sheet. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a small, careless choice that lands like a verdict. Tessa Monroe's story matters because the hurt didn't come from a stranger. It came from the people who were supposed to flinch first. This is the part she can still hear clearly. My ankle throbbed in a steady, ugly rhythm, like it was arguing with my heartbeat. The bandage was already dotted through. I stood near the kitchen island because sitting made me feel weak, and I couldn't handle feeling weak in that house. On the counter, my paperwork lay flat. The estimate from the orthopedic clinic, the surgery date, the warning in plain language, do it now or risk permanent instability. My dad didn't look at it. Lawrence Monroe was bent over a folder with glossy Marina letterhead, signing with the careful focus he usually saved for things that impressed other people. My mom, Camille, held her tea like a prop. My brother Julian lounged on a stool, scrolling, one foot tapping like he was waiting for his turn to speak. I need the surgery this week. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. Dad slid a page into place. We already committed to the club. I stared at him. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for help. Camille's eyes moved over me in a quick pass, like she was checking whether I was bleeding on anything expensive. You're an adult, Tessa. Adults handle their own emergencies. Julian let out a short laugh. Sell something. You've got that laptop. Those little projects. People love minimalism now. I shifted my weight and felt a sharp flash up my leg. I gripped the edge of the counter until it steadied. The estimate is $8,200. Dad finally glanced at the paper, then back to his folder. The Marina initiation is $32,000, non-refundable. Backing out makes us look unstable. The word unstable hit harder than the pain. I pushed the folder of medical papers closer, slow and deliberate, like I was sliding evidence across a table. Say it out loud. Say you're choosing the Marina over whether I walk normally again. Camille's mouth tightened. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. My throat burned. I'm being clear. Dad's pen paused. His gaze dropped past my face, past my shaking hands down to the bandage. A small red spot had made it through and was spreading. He leaned back, annoyed. For God's sake, don't drip on the rug. That was the moment. Not the refusal, not the money, the rug. We've heard plenty of family arguments. That one landed in the room like a lid closing. I gathered my papers with one hand, with the other. I pressed harder against my ankle and took a breath that tasted like copper and shame. Julian's voice followed me, casual. Text me when you figure it out. At the door. I turned just enough to look at my father. I will. Outside. The cold hit my face, and I realized my cheeks were wet anyway. I wiped them fast, like that could erase what happened. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I already knew I wasn't coming back to ask again. If anything in this story feels familiar, you'll know where the comments are. The bus ride back felt longer than it was. Every bump sent a small warning up my leg, like my body was reminding me not to forget what had just happened. By the time I unlocked my apartment, my hands were shaking, not from pain exactly, more from the effort of keeping myself together. The place smelled faintly like detergent and cold air. I dropped my bag by the door and lowered myself onto the couch. Careful, slow. The bandage was darker now. I peeled it back just enough to see the red seeping through, then wrapped it tighter. I didn't want to deal with it yet. My phone buzzed. Julian. Dad says you shouldn't take this personally. His message read, "Everyone has to prioritize." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered, then moved. Prioritize what? The reply came fast. Stability, image, long-term stuff. You'll get it one day. I laughed out loud. It came out wrong, sharp and short, like a bark. I typed back, deleted it, typed again. You're using their credit card again. A pause this time. Then temporary. Investors like momentum. I leaned my head back against the couch. The ceiling had a crack I'd been meaning to tell the landlord about. It looked bigger tonight. Growing up, there were rules in our house. Nobody ever wrote them down, but everyone knew them. Julian broke things and got second chances. I planned carefully and got lectures. He failed loudly. I failed quietly. That was the system. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Mom's voice came through soft, practiced. Honey, your father didn't mean it the way it sounded. I know exactly how he meant it. A breath on the other end. You're upset. This isn't the time to make big decisions. I'm not making one. I already made it. She lowered her voice. Like that changed anything. We just can't keep rescuing you every time something goes wrong. Something in my chest went still. You've never rescued me. Silence stretched, not shocked, not angry, just blank. We've listened to enough of these pauses to know when a line has been crossed, even if no one names it. I need to go. I told her. After the call ended, the apartment felt louder. The radiator clicked. A car horn sounded somewhere outside. I pressed my face into my hands and breathed until the shaking eased. I wasn't waiting for them to come around. I wasn't waiting for permission. I reached for the folder with the surgery estimate and pulled it onto my lap. Whatever happened next, I was handling it myself. The knock came late enough that my first thought wasn't relief. It was the opposite. I pulled myself upright, one hand on the wall, the other gripping the doorframe like it might disappear. Who is it? It's me, a voice said. Don't panic. I opened the door a crack and saw Mara standing there with her hood half up, hair pulled back like she hadn't planned on staying. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her, tired in a way that didn't fade when she smiled. Hey, she said, already scanning my leg. Okay. That looks bad. I stepped aside and let her in. She kicked the door shut with her heel and dropped her bag on the floor. The apartment felt smaller with another person in it, but also steadier. She crouched in front of me without asking. Let me see. I already wrapped it. Humor me. I peeled the bandage back a little. Her mouth tightened, but she didn't make a sound. When's the surgery? This week, if I can swing it. She sat back on her heels and nodded once. No lecture, no pause. I brought something, she said, reaching into her bag. I shook my head. Mara, don't. She pulled out a thick envelope and pressed it into my hand. Take it. I opened it before I could stop myself. Bills. Mixed. Crumpled. Old 20s. A few 10s. It felt heavier than it should have. It's 1,100, she said. I sold the shelving unit and the spare tire. The car still runs. I stared at her. You can't. She shrugged. I already did. I don't need you wrecking yourself for me. Her eyes held mine. Steady. They already decided I was wrecked. This doesn't change that. Something broke loose then. Not loud. Just enough that my throat burned. You shouldn't have to do this. Mara leaned back against the wall and exhaled. I know what it's like when they decide you're not worth fixing. I'm not letting them do that to you too. We've seen this kind of moment before. It's never flashy. It's usually someone choosing to step forward when everyone else steps away. I pressed the envelope into her chest. I'll pay you back. She pushed it right back. Later. When walking doesn't hurt. I laughed, then winced, then laughed again because it felt better than crying. She stayed for a while, made tea with the last clean mug, sat on the floor because the couch was too low. At the door. She squeezed my shoulder. Call me when you schedule it. I will. After she left, the apartment felt quiet again. Different quiet this time. I placed the envelope on the table next to the surgery estimate and sat there, breathing through the ache. I wasn't alone. Not really. And that mattered more than the number on the page. The clinic put me on hold long enough that my leg went numb again. When the line clicked back, The woman's voice sounded practiced and gentle. "We can schedule you for Thursday morning," she said, "but we'll need confirmation of payment before we finalize." "I have some of it," I told her. "I'm working on the rest." There was a pause. Keys tapping. "We'll need the full amount cleared at least 1 business day prior." After the call ended, I sat there with my phone in my lap, staring at the dark screen like it might offer another option if I waited long enough. I called the financing company next. A man answered, upbeat, in a way that felt rehearsed. "So you're looking at medical coverage for orthopedic surgery," he said. "We can approve you today. What does that look like long term?" He explained it slowly, clearly, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Monthly payments, interest, penalties if I missed anything. I did the math on the back of an envelope while he talked. Rent, utilities, groceries. The number didn't work. Not cleanly, not safely. If I miss a payment, I asked, "What happens?" "Well," he said, cheerful again, "we always encourage our clients to prioritize their health." I laughed under my breath. That wasn't the question. He adjusted his tone. "Late fees, reporting, it can snowball." I thanked him and hung up. The envelope with Mara's money sat on the table, slightly open, like it was watching me. I called her. "You don't have to," she said before I could even finish explaining. "You already know that." "Right." "I know." I said, "I just need you to know I'm doing it." She exhaled. "Okay. Then do it scared. Just don't do it alone." We've heard that kind of resolve before. It usually sounds quieter than people expect. Thursday came fast. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. A nurse asked for my name, my date of birth, my consent. I signed where she pointed, my handwriting shaky but legible. In pre-op, the surgeon leaned against the wall and went over the plan. "Recovery won't be quick," he said, "but you should walk normally again." "That's enough," I told him. When they wheeled me toward the operating room, my phone buzzed once. A text from my landlord reminding me rent was due soon. I turned the screen face down and focused on the ceiling lights sliding past. One thing at a time. I had chosen to walk. Everything else would have to wait. Recovery blurred time in strange ways. Days folded into each other, marked mostly by pill alarms and the slow math of pain. When my phone rang that afternoon, I almost let it go. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. Downtown Chicago. "Is this Tessa Monroe?" a man asked when I answered. "Yes." "This is Daniel Harris. I'm calling regarding your accident claim. Do you have a moment?" "I'm on the couch," I said. "That's about all I can handle right now. That'll work." He paused, then continued. "The insurance review is complete. Liability was clear. We're prepared to move forward with a structured settlement." I shifted, careful with my leg. "What does that mean?" "It means an initial payment of $900,000, followed by scheduled disbursements over the next few years. Total value comes to $2,900,000. The number landed heavy, not exciting, not comforting. Heavy. "And this is final," I said. "No appeals. Final." He confirmed. "You'd still want independent counsel before signing." After the call ended, I sat there with my phone pressed to my chest, breathing through the pressure building behind my ribs. This wasn't relief. It felt like responsibility showing up unannounced. I called Mara first. She picked up on the second ring. "You okay?" "I think so." My voice wobbled. "I got the settlement." She didn't jump in. She waited. "They're offering $2,900,000. Spread out." A soft exhale on her end. "Okay. That's real. It doesn't feel like it. It won't yet," she said. "But it will." We've noticed people rarely celebrate moments like this right away. They usually sit very still. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Julian. I called a lawyer instead. One Mara's old accountant had once mentioned. Someone who dealt in assets and cleanup. His office smelled like paper and coffee. He shook my hand gently, eyes flicking to my brace. "Before we talk numbers," he said, settling into his chair. "Tell me what you're worried about." I thought about the Marina paperwork, the rug, Julian's easy confidence. "I don't want this to disappear," I said, "and I don't want it used against me." He nodded once. "Then we structure it." Quietly. Over the next hour, he asked questions I hadn't expected, about my parents' house, about loans, about whether anyone had ever asked me to co-sign anything. "They like to look solid." I said, "That's important to them." "That usually means leverage," he replied. When I left, the sun was lower, the sidewalk crowded with people heading somewhere together. I moved slower than them, but steadier than before. Back in my apartment, I placed the settlement paperwork beside my medical bills. 2 stacks. Same table. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning forgiveness either. I was planning to understand exactly what I was standing on before I took another step. The lawyer called 2 days later and asked me to come back in. His office looked the same as before. Same stack of files, same coffee ring on the desk. He didn't offer small talk this time. I pulled what I could. He said, sliding a folder toward me. Public records, lending disclosures. A few things that shouldn't line up, but do. I opened it slowly. Mortgage statements, refinance dates, lines of credit. The numbers repeated in different places, like echoes. "The house is leveraged close to the ceiling," he continued. "Multiple refinances. Variable terms. The last one was taken out less than a year ago." I flipped a page. Julian's name appeared more than once. "He's tied to most of it," the lawyer added. "Business loans cross-collateralized against the property. Personal guarantees folded into family assets. If his venture collapses, the house goes with it." I felt my jaw tighten. They told me they couldn't help because money was tight. They couldn't help because exposure was tight. He said, "There's a difference. Another page, credit cards, short-term notes, a Marina membership fee financed instead of paid outright. They're not liquid," he said. "They're not even comfortable. They're managing appearances." I sat back, the chair creaking under me. The image of my father smoothing Marina paperwork came back, sharp and irritating. The rug, the blood. "So when they said no," I said, "it wasn't because they didn't have it." "No." He replied, "It was because giving it to you wouldn't have fixed their real problem." Something shifted then. Not anger, not relief, just clarity. We've noticed that moment when the story people tell themselves finally cracks. It's quiet. Almost disappointing. I closed the folder. What happens if the loans default? "The lender moves," he said. Fast. And not gently. I nodded. "Can someone else buy them?" "Yes," he said. "If they're sold as distressed debt, it happens all the time." I stood, testing my leg before fully committing my weight. I want to know who owns what. Every piece. He studied me for a second. "This isn't about retaliation." "No," I said. "It's about accuracy." That night, I called Mara. "They're not rich," I told her. She didn't sound surprised. I figured. The math never made sense. They chose a club fee over my surgery because they were scared. "Scared people make ugly choices," she said. "Doesn't make them less ugly. I'm not going to confront them." "Good," she replied. "They'd just rewrite it." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with the folder spread out. The same table where my medical bills had sat weeks earlier. Different paper. Same weight. I wasn't invisible because I lacked value. I was invisible because seeing me clearly would have forced them to see themselves. I picked up my phone and typed an email to the lawyer. "Let's talk about acquisition." I hit send, set the phone face down, and rested my hands on the table until the shaking stopped. The name came to me while I was waiting for the kettle to boil. Tideway. Something that moved quietly, pulled things along without asking permission. I typed it into an email and sent it to the lawyer before I could overthink it. He called the next morning. Clean name, neutral, hard to read. That's the point. From there, Everything happened in pieces. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Documents passed through hands that weren't mine. Calls I didn't join. Updates delivered in short sentences. The lender is open to offloading, he said one afternoon. They don't want this on their books. How long? A few weeks, maybe longer. Depends on how desperate they are. I pictured my parents' house at dusk, lights on in rooms they didn't use. Julian pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. I didn't feel anything sharp, just focused. Mara stopped by one evening with takeout. She set the bag down and watched me sign a page on my tablet. You okay? She asked. I think so. You're very calm. I learned from them. I said, then shook my head. Not the way they wanted. She smiled at that. Just don't disappear into it. I won't. The lawyer called again a week later. We have preliminary control over the notes. Quietly. I closed my eyes for a second and let the air out of my lungs. What's next? We offer relief, he said. Consolidation. Protection. Something they'll recognize as a win. And the terms, there's a clause. He added, careful now. Standard, but firm. No commercial use of the property. No misrepresentation. Any violation ends tenancy immediately. I pictured Julian's ring light in the living room, his voice pitching confidence. That'll do. We've seen how people lean into comfort when they think it's being handed back to them. That night, my phone buzzed with a family group message. Julian posted a photo of wine glasses on the kitchen counter. Big things coming. He wrote. I turned the phone face down and finished my dinner. The food had gone cold, but I didn't rush. For the first time in a long while, there was nothing I needed to explain. I set an alert on my calendar and stood up, testing my leg. Solid, not perfect, but steady. The tide was moving. They just hadn't noticed yet. I didn't have to look for it. It showed up on my phone while I was brushing my teeth. Julian's face filled the screen, framed by the living room I knew too well. My parents' couch. The painting Mom always straightened when guests came over. A ring light glowing just out of frame. Live in 5, Julian said to someone off camera. This is where the vision really comes together. I turned off the water and watched for a few seconds longer than I meant to. People drifted behind him, glasses in hand, laughter, shoes on the rug. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the lawyer. Did you authorize commercial activity at the property? His message read, no. Good. We have documentation. I set the phone down and sat on the edge of the tub, my leg stretched out in front of me. It didn't hurt. Not like before. That felt important. An hour later, another message came through. A formal notice, clean and brief. Lease termination. Effective immediately. Compliance review scheduled. My mother called first. Tessa, something strange is happening, she said, voice tight. We got an email from some holding company, Tideway. Do you know anything about this? I've heard the name. This isn't funny. I know. Her breath came shallow. They're saying we violated something. Julian was just entertaining friends. Friends don't bring lighting rigs. She went quiet. We've noticed that silence often arrives before understanding does. Julian called next. No greeting. No pause. Fix this. I can't. You don't even live there. That's not the point. His voice sharpened. Dad wants to meet whoever's behind this. Okay. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning. Neutral office, glass walls, no family photos. When my parents walked in, they didn't look angry yet, just confused. Julian followed, jaw tight. The lawyer stood and nodded. Thank you for coming. The owner will be joining us. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My father stopped short. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Julian stared at me like the floor had shifted. I took the chair at the head of the table and rested my hands there. Steady. I didn't change. I said, I just stopped being invisible. The house was quiet after that. Not empty. just no longer mine to carry. I didn't stay for the arguing. I didn't need to. What mattered had already been said. I walked out on my own 2 feet and felt the pavement under them, solid and familiar. Mara met me later at my place. She sat at the table, folding the edge of a receipt over and over. "You okay?" she asked. "I am," I said, and meant it. We talked about small things. A lease she was considering, a job lead, dinner plans that didn't depend on anyone else's mood. Weeks passed. The calls slowed, then stopped. I helped Mara restart, carefully, with the limits we both agreed on. No secrets, no leverage, just work and time. What changed most wasn't them. It was how I stood inside my own life. I stopped bracing. I stopped shrinking. Tessa Monroe no longer needed permission to take up space. If this moment echoes something you've lived, you know where stories like this find each other. We stayed quiet at the end because some endings don't need applause. They just need room to breathe.